Okay, let's talk about our dogs. What if I told you that something you do every single day, something you see as an act of pure love, is actually teaching your dog that you can't be trusted? It sounds harsh, I know, but today we're going to get into the really subtle, often invisible mistakes that can quietly, day by day, damage that incredible bond you have.
So let's just ask the question straight up. Are you accidentally breaking your dog's trust? It's a tough one to think about, right? Because the things that chip away at this trust, they don't look like abuse, they're not neglect, they look like a perfectly normal Tuesday. They look like playtime and cuddles and all the things we think our dog should love. And that right there, that's what's at stake. It's not about some big dramatic blow-up. It's about this slow, quiet erosion until one day you realize your dog hesitates just a little when you reach for them, or they sit just out of arm's reach. That's the stuff we absolutely have to prevent.
So here's our game plan to get to the bottom of this. We're going to break it all down. We'll start with the physical ways we misunderstand them. Then we'll move into the psychological missteps that make their world feel unstable. And all of that is going to build up to the single most important conversation you might not even realize you've been missing.
All right, first up, physical misunderstandings. This is all about how we misread our dog's bodies. We're going to look at some super common, everyday things that we do out of love, but from a dog's point of view can feel confusing or even kind of threatening.
Let's start with a big one, the hug. I mean, for us humans, it's the ultimate sign of affection, right? But think about it. A dog's brain didn't evolve with hugging. In the canine world, one animal putting their body and weight over another is an act of pressure, maybe even social dominance. So when we wrap our arms around them, their brain isn't necessarily thinking, "Oh, this is love." It's often reading, "I'm being constrained."
And listen, this isn't just a guess. There was a study that looked at hundreds of photos of people hugging their dogs. And the results? The vast majority of those dogs were showing at least one of these clear signs of stress. They're basically whispering, "Hey, I'm a little uncomfortable here," but we're so caught up in our moment of affection that we just completely miss it.
Here's another huge one we get wrong all the time. You walk through the door, and your dog goes absolutely bonkers. Jumping, spinning, whining, and we think, "Oh, my dog is so happy to see me." But here's the thing. Excitement is not the same as happiness. Excitement is high arousal. Their fight-or-flight system is firing on all cylinders, and their rational thinking brain is basically offline. Real happiness? That's a state of calm contentment. It's when their nervous system is peaceful and regulated.
So, believe it or not, the most loving, trust-building thing you can do when you get home is to just be calm. When you model that calm energy, you're actually teaching their nervous system how to come down from that frantic state. A dog who learns that being calm is what gets your gentle attention is a dog that can find that true, deep, contented happiness.
Okay, so we've covered the physical side. Let's move on to section 2, psychological missteps. This goes way beyond body language. This is about the invisible world we create for our dogs. Are we building a world that feels safe and predictable, or one that's kind of confusing and keeps them on edge?
This is so important. A lot of us think a sharp no or a little tug on the leash is just, part of training. But major research out of the University of Porto showed something pretty startling. Dogs trained with even mild punishment-based methods have higher long-term stress hormones, they show more stress-related behaviors, and they actually develop a more pessimistic outlook on life.
And here's the crucial why behind that. Dogs are absolute masters of association. When you punish them, they don't always connect it to the thing they did wrong, like chewing on your shoe. Instead, they connect that bad feeling with whatever is most present and obvious in that moment, which is usually you. So the lesson they learned isn't "don't chew shoes," it's "scary things happen when my human is around and I make a mistake." And that's how trust starts to break down. The key is to show them what you want them to do instead, and make that the best, most rewarding choice possible. Okay, let's be real for a second. Is your dog allowed on the couch, but only when you're in a good mood? Can they jump up on you when you're wearing old sweatpants, but they get yelled at for doing the exact same thing when you're dressed for work?
See, to you, that just feels like being flexible. But to your dog, it's chaos. They can't understand the context of, "Oh, he's wearing his good pants." All they know is that the same behavior sometimes gets a cuddle and other times gets them in trouble. That kind of unpredictability is a massive source of low-level anxiety because their world just doesn't make sense. Consistency is what creates safety.
And this leads us to a huge perspective shift. All that stuff we label bad behavior, the barking, the chewing, pulling on the leash, so often it isn't a behavior problem at all. It's just a perfectly normal, healthy dog whose body and mind are screaming for an outlet, for the exercise and mental stimulation that they're just not getting.
Okay, this brings us to our third and final section. And honestly, this is the whole ball game. If you can get this one thing right, it changes everything about your relationship. We're about to talk about the conversation your dog has been trying to have with you probably since the day you brought them home.
So what is this? 30 plus. What on earth could that number refer to? It's not the number of tricks they can learn. It's not the number of commands they can follow. It's something much, much more profound.
It's the number of distinct, calming signals that have been identified in dogs. This comes from the groundbreaking work of Norwegian dog trainer Tord Rudgas. She discovered this incredibly rich, precise vocabulary that dogs use all the time to say things like, "I'm feeling a little stressed here," or, "Hey, let's just de-escalate this. No conflict needed." It's an entire language we've been missing out on.
And we're not talking about obscure, hard-to-spot signals. That yawn when you're feeling tense, that's not your dog being bored. It's them trying to calm the energy in the room. When they suddenly start sniffing the ground as another dog approaches, that's them politely saying, "Hey, I'm no threat." That big shake-off when they're not even wet, that's a literal stress reset. These aren't random actions. They're words. They are sentences, and they're happening right in front of us.
And here's the absolutely devastating part. When a dog sends these signals over and over and over again and gets no response, they learn a really terrible lesson. They learn that talking to you is pointless. It doesn't work. So they just stop. They stop giving the warnings. Not because they're suddenly okay with the situation, but because they've given up trying to tell you they're not. And that's a quiet little tragedy. So, after hearing all that, the big question is, how do we start to fix this? And that brings us to our final section, how to start listening. The good news, the really good news, is that rebuilding this bond and starting to learn their language is probably simpler than you think.
It really just boils down to these 3 simple steps. Number 1, slow down. Seriously, put your phone away on walks. Sit on the floor with them for 5 minutes with no agenda. Just be present. Number 2, watch. Don't just look at them, really watch them. Look for patterns. When do they lick their lips? What happens right before they shake off? And finally, number 3, listen. Not with your ears, but with your eyes. Connect what you're seeing to what's happening around you. That's how you start to understand their dialect.
And here is the absolute best part. Your dog is biologically wired to want to connect with you. That's the result of tens of thousands of years of partnership. Trust is their default setting. It isn't something you have to earn from scratch. But it isn't indestructible. It's a living thing that needs our attention and our care to thrive.
So, I'll leave you with this one thought. Every yawn, every sniff, every time they've looked away, it's all been part of a long conversation. Your dog has been talking to you since the day they came into your life. The only question left is, are you ready to start listening back?